Hello and welcome to my home. Today I thought I would do something just a little bit different. At night I like to listen to the Bible through the night, and I put my phone that has the Bible program on there under my pillow, and it acts like a megaphone and I get to hear it, but my husband, who can sleep right next to me, doesn't. And so it's really cool and I like to listen to that. And as I was doing so, this story came to mind, and so I wrote it down on paper, and I'd like to read it to you today. I entitled it, All I Have. And this is my imagination of her side of the story. The wind blasted across the barren land. Arashat wiped the perspiration off her face and squinted at the cloudless sky. Why, God of Israel, are you punishing your people? We here in Zarephath also feel your displeasure. She knelt in the cracked earth and scratched around, hoping. The years of famine had taken everything, and for months she had searched for food. Too soon, her already raw fingers bled. She stopped and briefly closed her eyes. Nothing, not even a speck of root. She already knew, but desire and need outweighed rational thought. Hunger drives. She sighed, more so when her child's life was at stake. Her weary body protested as she stood to go into the house. Arashat brushed away the streaks from her eyes, thought better of it, and used her apron. My face must be a mess, she murmured. With a plastered-on smile and a squaring of her shoulders, she entered the dim room. The only light came from the sun through the windows. She waited until her eyes adjusted. Her small dwelling appeared as she felt, dismal. Anything of value had been sold or bartered for food. Her boy played with blocks, stick figures of men and donkeys. A good and non-complaining child, a blessing. She ruffled his hair as she walked past him. She went to the flower bin. The months had taken the contents down to just a handful. Things would have been different if her husband, Bo Noam, still lived. He would have provided, but alas, a widow is not revered. A lone woman and a young son are nothing to her neighbors, the community, the town, or the world. They said she didn't pray enough to the gods they all worshipped. She had her doubts about the gods' unseeing eyes. The large oil jar sat light as a feather on the shelf. No sense peering into it. It hadn't changed in the last watches. No one came to refill the precious oil for cooking, and the lamp oil had been gone for what seemed like eons. Baal and Milk were, as always, silent and impotent. The God of Israel could bring rain. If only she was one of his chosen and God wasn't angry, then life wouldn't be so difficult. She wrung her hands. Mama, I'm hungry. When can you make our meal? Soon, Jonah, soon. I'll fetch some sticks to cook our cake. You play. I'll be back after I find the right ones. Not a small fire, not a large fire. A perfect fire to cook our meal. Remember, this meal is special. This one will last us for our lifetime. She bent and gave him a fierce, brief hug and hurried out the door before tears fell. She hadn't the courage to tell him the truth about their final meal. She didn't want to think of his cries and turmoil when his hunger would be unbearable. At Zarephath's gates, she stopped and stooped to pick up the sticks needed. A voice called, "Woman!" She turned and saw a man in the raiment of the Israelites. She straightened and looked around, but she stood alone, so he must be speaking to her. She lifted an eyebrow. "I've come a long way. I'm thirsty. Please bring me a little water in a cup." Water was a priceless, precious commodity. Eroshat huffed, but put the sticks down and turned toward home. He called out, "Please bring me a morsel of bread." She faced him, her hands on hips, and with gritted teeth she said, "As the Lord your God lives, I don't have any bread. We only have a portion of flour and a little oil. I'm gathering these sticks," she pointed to her small stack, "to make our last meal. My son and I will eat, and then we will die." "Do not fear," he said with authority. "Go and do as you've said, but make me a small cake first and bring it to me. Then you can make the one for your son and yourself. For the Lord God of Israel says, the bin of your flour and the jar of oil will not be used up until the Lord sends rain upon the earth." She stared at him for a moment. Should she believe? Should she hope? Can she trust the Lord God of Israel? Her heart warred with her upbringing. Then she shrugged her shoulders and nodded. Eroshat lifted the sticks and the hem of her garment and hurried to do his bidding. His words rang in her ears, and hope gathered. Joy came from somewhere deep inside her. At her house, she flung wide the door. "Jonah, come help me make a little cake for a special person from Israel. He is hungry. Then we will eat." Eroshat built a fire. A song rose out of her as she let Jonah mix the oil into the last portion of flour. She kneaded the dough and slid it on the paddleboard and into the fire. Jonah sang with her as they waited for the tantalizing smell of freshly baked bread. His tummy rumbled. She drew him to her and swung him in a circle. "We will eat after we take this cake to the prophet." The bread, hot out of the oven, she put into a basket along with a cup of water and clasped Jonah's hand. "We will take this together." They found the stranger sitting on a bench near the gate. "Jonah, take this to the man in the robes." Jonah took the basket and skipped to the man. "We made this for you. Mama says you're a prophet from the God of Israel." "Thank you. Call me Elijah." He opened the basket and ate the meal. Elijah stood. "I bet you are hungry, boy. Ask your mama if I can stay with you for a while." Jonah gazed at his mama. "Mama?" "Of course. God sent this man to us, and we will have our special party, only this time with plenty to eat, for as long as the God of Israel decides." I wrote this story after listening to the account in Numbers when all the men of each clan gave a gold or silver platter filled with grain and oil to the Lord. I thought, how did they give that when that may have been the only gold or silver platter they had? Because when they left Egypt, the Egyptians gave them gifts of fine things. And that may have been the only thing they had. They didn't have a job. They lived in the wilderness. They had – flocks of goats and lambs. But God doesn't ask us to give of our abundance. He asks us to give to Him with a cheerful heart. Sometimes the gift to Him is all we have. I think of the widow in the above story out of 1 Kings 17, 8 through 15. That's where you'll find this story. And I also think of the widow that Jesus talks about, who gave a few mites, which were all that she had. You find that in Mark 12, 43 through 44, and Luke 21, 1 through 4. Both of these women gave not from abundance, but from their poverty. They gave from a heart of obedience and love. So I ask you, how are we doing in this area? Do we have a heart like the widow of Zarephath? When God says, give, even though that's all you have? Or just give out of your abundance? Or just give because that's what I've asked you to do? Are we stingy with what we have? The giving is the tithe. It's the money and time and talents that we have that we offer to the Lord from a heart of love. How are our hearts' attitudes and our giving when we give unto the Lord, who blesses us all of the time? I hope you enjoyed the story of my version of her side of the story. And I hope that you ponder the things that the story brings out. And that you think about your gifts to the Father who blesses us with all things, all the time. Have a great day.